3, 2, 1, go.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is episode 2.
Yes, of Sparking Creativity, the Ethno Arts Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Justin.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, so last time, episode 1, we introduced this new word to many people, perhaps, this ethno arts word. And we introduced what this area of service is, this field of study. We talked about how it's helping people to connect with God, to engage with the Bible, and share the gospel in meaningful ways according to their culture. And we talked about arts as anything that has meaning and communicates something to a community.
Yes.
So this is a very broad thing. And so our first story was from the J group in Asia, and it highlighted just the importance of their culture, and particularly their instruments, how it was such an identity marker, and how choosing to follow Jesus and worship in a way that was foreign to their culture was a barrier to their community and the surrounding villages to wanting to follow Jesus. So we have a new story today that Trevor's going to share, and it's also focusing on the art form of music. And so we wanted to introduce or reintroduce one of these other terms that get used, which Trevor mentioned last time, which is ethnomusicology.
Mm-hmm.
So, ethno what, you say? Ethnomusicology. So, according to ethnomusicology.org, it is the study of music in its social and cultural contexts. Ethnomusicologists examine music as a social process in order to understand not only what music is, but what it means to its practitioners and audiences. So, that's how do you do that? If you are another definition I saw was particularly the study of non-Western music. So this term came from the West, from this academic field of ethnomusicology. But again, that word, the root word of ethnos, meaning ethnicity, culture, different communities.
People.
So yeah. So you want to say something?
Yeah, I had a thought that I forgot to mention to you. One of the things, I have a t-shirt in my closet, and it says in another language, it says music is not a universal language. And it's a real conversation starter, because a lot of people read it the first time, at least where I was, they would read it and they'd just, give me this knowing nod like, oh yeah, music is a universal. Wait, hold on. That says music is not a universal language. So there's this idea that people have in general that, oh, music, it transcends culture, and we can just translate, or we can listen to music and feel the same things. And so I just wanted to say, that's one of those ideas. Ethnomusicologists wouldn't really exist, wouldn't need to exist, if music spoke to all people in the same way, or the arts spoke to all people in the same way. It just isn't true. It's one of the things we say a lot is that music is a universal phenomenon. Almost every single culture in the world has music. Most people would say that every single culture in the world has music as a part of its heritage and culture, but it's not the same in each one. So that's the basis of what we're looking at.
Even the word music is a loaded term and has its own understanding in different cultures. There's different words that they use. Some cultures would say they don't even have music. If you do a little digging, you might identify some of what they have as music, but they put it in a different category. And so ultimately, ethnomusicology is wanting to know what is music to them? How does it function in their society? What words do they use? What if it's they don't consider it music? What do they consider what they have? What's the name for it? And how does it work? Now, moving into the ethnoarts focus, which we talked about, is it's helping to spark the creativity of the communities using their own cultural arts for some purpose. They're trying to address a need. They're trying to communicate a message. There has also been in ethnomusicology that has developed over recent years a field called applied ethnomusicology. So this is I guess where the overlap would be and where ethnoarts part of how it has come out of this particular field. I looked on the Library of Congress website, and they had a video from Jeff Titan, who is an ethnomusicologist. He's well known in the field, but he's the co-editor of the Oxford Handbook of Applied Ethnomusicology, and he defines applied ethnomusicology as ethnomusicology put to practical use in the community for social improvement, cultural good, and economic advantage, a musical benefit, or some combination of these. So you are applying that study of music to some purpose. And so
Yes.
And so this sort of then brings us into our story and our topic for today. And you're going to share with us about a group from Brazil, and
Yes.
where the ethnomusicologist was involved and how he helped them to write their own songs. And I heard in an interview at a webinar with you and another ethnoarts friend of ours, and someone was asking, like, why do they need you to come? Like, aren't they already writing their own songs? Aren't people already doing that? So I can't remember how he answered the question, but how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think he basically said, well, it would be great if we were unnecessary, if someone coming in and from the outside didn't need to come in because a culture was already using their arts to glorify God and in all of these ways. And then we talked about some of the barriers being historical. There might be a long time culture, at least where I work, there were a lot of cultures that said we can only sing songs the way that they've been sung for generations. If we sing them any differently, maybe it's a spiritual thing that, the spirits will be upset, or there's some sort of fear involved. It could just be tradition. I think we have that in our culture, in Western culture, in churches. Tradition. If we use any instrument but the organ, we're somehow doing the wrong thing. And so sometimes that spark we're looking for is the scriptural thing that unlocks it, to say, God created our cultures and our languages and our art forms, are just the beauty found within the cultures to glorify Him. And there's a lot of different ways, but I think a lot of it is just tradition. There's a lot of things that we do simply because we've always done them that way. And is there anything else that you can think of?
I would just say that this isn't the case for every culture. There's certainly communities where their arts are thriving, and it's a high value to create new songs and write new songs.
Yeah.
Not just for worship or for any religious purposes, but just for the art's sake and for the other ways that music would function in their society. And so it's not that an ethnomusicologist is needed in every community. Some are thriving, but I think there are some benefits to what, like, an objective outside perspective could offer, and maybe trying to spark some new ideas of how to use their creativity. And I would say particularly in the applied field, this is where we see a great benefit. And it's a great opportunity for someone working in a cross-cultural context to be a champion for their music.
Yeah.
And to be an advocate and an encourager of that. And maybe someone who is trained in how to facilitate like the discovery of all the richness that their culture has to offer, and just provide a space for them to think through different ways that they want to use their music. Maybe new ideas can come from that.
Yeah, and another thing that popped into my head was that sometimes, and we have had to reconcile this a lot, sometimes maybe missionaries historically haven't known what to do, and so all they've been able to do as a church was growing, or as a community was developing their own materials, they would just translate what was available. Okay, I know this hymn, I know this maybe alphabet song. Let's just put local words. Let's literally just translate word for word. Whereas the form of that, maybe the music or the dance or something like that, was suppressed because of fear of what that might be. I think we talked about that in the last episode a bit. So there's a lot of different ways that you can see the need for this. And this story about the Canela people in Brazil shows the first one we were talking about, that sometimes people just haven't thought about creating something new because tradition says we just do it the same way. Okay, we good to start the story?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right, this is a story that Justin and I and many other ethno-arts people have probably told several times because it's one that gives people an aha moment with ethno-arts. And so basically there's a couple, Jack and Joe Popgis. Jack is a writer. He's got some fantastic books. He's a speaker. We've been fans of his for a while, just hearing his stories from the field and life in general. But they were working in Brazil. They're a Canadian couple, missionaries with Wycliffe Bible Translators, and they had been working as translators for some time and really wanted to see music from the Canela incorporated into what they were doing. They wanted it to be in the life of those who were becoming believers, and it was just a very confusing situation for them. They could not grasp all the subtleties of the Canela music. The Canelas themselves showed little interest in really writing any new music, and they couldn't figure out why. They loved music, and they sang their old songs all the time. In fact, they would just really spend days and days and nights, and all night long they would have these really long sing-songs in the village's central plaza. So Jack and Joe tried for a long time to learn to sing, but they couldn't make heads or tails of what they were supposed to do with the rhythm or the tones. There was just something very different about that. It was confusing to them, and they had musical talent, so it wasn't just, oh, we're not good singers. It was, we don't understand this system. And so a lot of people said, well, why wouldn't you just translate hymns that you already have? Just change the words, make them Canela. And they said this would have caused problems because hymn translation can perpetuate the idea, which is a false idea, that Christianity is a foreign religion. They didn't want to put that on them and say, well, you have to change the way that you sing in order to sing to God, because that could be damaging to the acceptance of the gospel message, which was the primary reason they were working so hard there. So actually, we should probably listen to a clip at this point, because this music is fascinating and I love it. And we often ask people, what do you think the words are saying? What does this music invoke? What are the feelings? What are the emotions that you have as you listen to it? So here is a clip of one of the Canela songs that we'll be talking about later. So this, Justin, what are some of the responses that you've heard when people are listening to this for the first time? What do they think this is saying?
Many people, they've responded a lot how I did when I first heard of it. First of all, my musical background is trying hard to grasp some sense of harmony and intervals, and it seems like there's not like the standard, singing on the third or the fifth above the root. I don't even know where the root is necessarily in this one. People talk about like it just makes them feel uncomfortable, I think, because it doesn't line up with what our sense of like beauty in music sounds like. People have said they sound sad. Some say maybe even kind of frightening. Some people thought this is because it makes them feel sad. That maybe this is used for a funeral, or it's something kind of a lament or grieving. Right. We've heard a number of a lot of different reactions and different feelings that it invokes in different people from different cultures. We've shared this with not just people in our churches in America, but other colleagues across the globe, and everyone has different ideas, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah. And so what are the actual words of this song? We were trying to remember them precisely, but we can get close.
It is God's word that makes us so very happy.
Yeah. This is a joyful song.
Happy.
Yeah.
This is their happy music, Trevor? Are you sure?
I've talked to some people who have sung a rendition of this, and they have said the more we sing it, the more we love it. And I think that's one of those things that as you're living in another context, as you're getting to know a different culture, the things that at first felt very jarring and because they were so far away from what was familiar to you, eventually it becomes this beautiful thing because of the context, because of the relationships, because of the history and your shared experience. I just think that's really a cool thing. Probably the 10th time you listen to it, you'll start jamming with it a little bit more than you were the first time, just as you get used to it.
I imagine for the Popechees when they were there, like as they got to know people and it became special to them because of their connection with that culture and their relationships. They knew more, they could appreciate more.
Yeah. And yet they still couldn't figure this out, which spurred them on to the next phase. They tried. Right.
So that's two separate things. There's appreciation and then there's understanding. And I think like if someone were to come into our church and say, let's make a joyful noise this morning, and they start singing this, it would not communicate joy to me.
Yeah.
But maybe if they shared the story that you're going to share, maybe if we understood where it came from and it could appreciate how God has gifted the Canella people, then maybe we could appreciate it more.
Yeah.
But then how do we move to understanding?
Yeah. So basically what ended up happening was someone very a giant in our community, one of the forefathers of ethno arts, we would say, Tom Avery, Dr. Tom Avery. He was working in Brazil at the time, and so Jack and Joe knew him, and they asked for his help. Hey, we are struggling with this. We need some help in understanding. Can you come and check it out and see if you can help us understand and find a way to just spark something new? So Tom came out. He did some extensive library research on the tribe, which is one of the things we always say, read as much as you can, see if anybody has written about a musical system or artistic system of any kind. He went to the village. He recorded a bunch of music. He, wanted to capture it as it's performed and not just have somebody send it to him or try to explain it to him. He transcribed it. He wrote it all down. He also he is the one who really developed a specific way to analyze melodies that I found fascinating back when I was studying, where you would look at what are all of the possible different directions each tone can go, which ones are most likely and least likely, and analyze which tones they all use. He was just studying it, trying to learn this because the people themselves didn't really see any value of why would we write something new? We don't know how to write something new because we don't do that. We always sing what's old. He's looking at every aspect of it: the form, the melody, the rhythm, the scale, everything you can think of musically. And I believe there was dance involved in this, though the articles I've read haven't talked too much about that. So he discovered that there are some tones in there that are definitely not a part of our Western scale, so they wouldn't fit. They'd fit in between the cracks on a piano, for example, which makes it difficult to hear. Just the subtle differences. So basically, Tom and Jack then worked to put a lot of scripture lyrics, as Jack had been translating and working a lot with the language. He helped with the lyrics. And then Tom came up with some melodies and harmonies and all sorts of things that he could figure out through transcription, through analysis, all of this. They made 23 songs, and they put them on lyric sheets, and they recorded themselves singing them as they were trying to figure this out. And they brought it back to the village, and they started playing the tape. So the moment that they started playing the tape, the Canellas became very, very excited. Within minutes, the men started joining in, and pretty soon the women started adding a higher pitched harmony part. And Jack just says, I stood there and I bawled. It was just so perfect. So every night after that, they just kept doing this. They kept learning the new songs. More and more people would gather to learn them. And then one of the song leaders came up to Jack and said, I never realized that we could make up our own songs. And another one said, you've been here all of these years and gave us writing. Your friend Tom has only been here a little while, and he taught us how to sing to God. So Jack now looks back and he estimates that 5 to 10% of this group, of the Canella group, have become believers, and they have continued on this tradition. We're not sure. I really want to look into more where the church is at now, but it seems like one of those moments that just became a really, really big foundation for the growing church in this community. The Canella community, it was about, I think in 2006, the last survey I saw, so there's 2,500 people. This is a small community. It's not millions of people. I'm guessing it's larger than that now. But one of the things that Jack says about this is when we started introducing the songs, it was almost like pouring gasoline on a campfire, and it just kept multiplying, and people just got so excited about it. Some of the songs that they wrote after that and translated it. That was what we were going to talk about. Immediately, what happened? When one of the song leaders took these songs, he started trying to memorize them. He was just reading them and learning them and listening to them, and he immediately started making improvements. So he didn't accept them as they were, and Tom didn't hold on to them, and Jack didn't hold on to them and say, no, this is exactly how it should be. This is perfect. Somebody who was knowledgeable, somebody who was a song leader, who was respected in the community, started saying, no, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, we're going to make this melody like this, we're going to change this word over here. And other people started writing extra verses. And that was, I think, it's just indicative of what we try to do all the time. We're not trying to do what Tom did. In certain situations, in order to get that spark there, you need to write something and say, here, start with this. Maybe this will help, but we're not going to be the ones to come in and pretend like we're insiders when we're the outsiders. We want people to take it and go, no, I can make it better. And to realize they have that power, and they have that creativity, and they have especially the cultural knowledge of what is beautiful to them. One of my favorite quotes from this, and then I'll end, is that Tom Avery said this: for some reason, expressing "I like your music" is often interpreted as "I like you." It's something that you can see on people's faces. If you're there's another tribe that he worked with in Brazil, the Satare, and they had been singing translated hymns, and it was all Western music with their local words. And he said they looked at the ground and they shuffled their feet, and it looked really somber. But when they began singing the hymns that they wrote in their own style, they sang with such enthusiasm that the jugular veins on their necks stood out. You can sometimes visibly see when people are excited. I know I have seen that in different locations. It's a very exciting thing when people really realize that, oh, I can worship the way God created me to worship. I don't have to import it from somewhere else. So that's the story of the Canela. There's a lot more to it, I'm sure, but it's one of those stories that gets us excited.
Totally. I this was probably one of the first that I had experienced, where it was just completely different, and I had I had no frame of reference. I didn't know where to put this in my mind, and just not being able to connect with it. It just sounds foreign. It's like learning a new language. It's just sounds, and to understand that it could be possible to understand it. So one of my draws into this field also is because I enjoy learning about different expressions in other cultures, even if I don't personally connect to it. It's just fascinating to me, the diversity that God has put in all these different communities, and to think that it could be possible to understand even a little bit is intriguing to me. So in part of our training, we would read analysis from other cultures written by ethnomusicologists. And I feel like the ethnomusicologist is trained to go in and do this in-depth analysis and look at all the different features of the music and be able to write about it then to help another Westerner understand this music. So someone like me, help me to understand even a little bit. They use this time signature a lot in this genre of music. Okay, that's really interesting to me. I know what that means, but it was it's very interesting. Then you could take that same skill and sort of reflect it back to a community who this was a need there. They didn't know how to write, but someone who's skilled to point out all these different features, then it sort of opens up a whole new realm of possibility for them. It's so inspiring and encouraging that something like that is possible.
Yeah, and that one of the caveats we have with that, and I think Tom would have been the first to say this later on, as things were developing, as more and more people got the vision of this, is that that's not the ideal situation to go in and analyze and then write stuff for people. The ideal is that people get the spark a little bit earlier. But this was a really just, I don't know, fiery spark when it did happen. And I think that was, the groups that he worked with are how a lot of this developed into ethno arts and broadened into what we're doing, which includes, if you change music of ethnomusicology and you add different lenses to that, you can say ethnodramatology or ethno what are some I can't
ethno what
danceatology.
We'll come back to these choreology for dance.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways if you can find the right Latin word to stick in there or something like that. But this is just one way that we can talk about it in terms that people start to understand, and then we broaden and say, look, the arts encompasses a lot of different things, and even these songs, I'm sure there's a lot that was going on in the songs of the Canela people that we don't know about. There was probably movement. There was probably differences in what the men sang and the women sang, and do we stomp or do we have instruments or things like that. So there's a lot of things going on, and that's exciting that we have lots of different ways to talk about it. And looking back at our history, I forgot to mention the timeline. I believe the Bible, the New Testament, was translated and finished in 1990. So we're talking about the 70s and 80s, I believe, that a lot of this part of the story was happening. And that was the foundation of some of the work that I was a part of in the Amazon. And It's exciting to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before and have tried things and figured them out and seen sparks like this, and probably had some failures, but mostly successes, and seeing this work move forward. So we're excited to share it with you, and hope you are excited by that and become an advocate for ethno-arts if you aren't already. We've got some ways that you can. Is that all? Are we ready to tell them how they can connect with us?
Yeah. I think it would be good if we could find maybe a link to some of Jack Popchi's books and writings.
A Kick in the Pants.
They're really great stories. Not just this particular story, but there are lots of great stories. He's a wonderful, gifted storyteller. But if we could find a link, maybe in the show notes to a couple of those.
That's a great idea. They've got great names too. A Poke in the Ribs, A Kick in the Pants. I think there's one other one I can think of. I love reading them to my kids as well. He's funny as well. Okay, well, we have a few things that we want to make sure you're aware of. We have an email. If you'd like to email us any questions, you can do that at ethnoartspod@gmail.com. Ethnoartspod, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram under those. And yeah, if you have any reaction whatsoever, if anything resonated with you, if you have a question, if you have a suggestion for a great story that you know of and you'd love to tell, we're going to get some people to interview. We want to let people tell their own stories. We would love to hear from you and keep journeying forward together.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here. We'll wrap this up now. We do appreciate it, and look forward to sharing next time.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. We would love to hear what you thought.
What resonated with you today? What questions did this raise? Anything you'd like to learn more about? Maybe you have stories you'd like to share.
Please feel free to contact us at ethnoartspod@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ethnoartspod.
We also invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. This will help others to find out about the show. Please feel free to share the podcast with others.
We look forward to sharing more with you next time on Sparking Creativity, the Ethno Arts Podcast.